You're listening to the all-new KBLU Radio Network. That's the Blue Raven Network. Visit our website at www.oneblueraven.weebly.com. Often duplicated, but never replicated. You're listening to the all-new KBLU Radio Network. That's the Blue Raven Network.
Often duplicated, never replicated. You're listening to the all-new KBLU Radio Network, Blue Raven Network.
The world of 1916 was complex, or the world of 1945 was complex. The world of 2016 is intensely complex. You'll be dealing with terrorists. You'll be dealing with hybrid armies. You'll be dealing with little green men. You're going to be dealing with tribes. You'll be dealing with national leaders and local leaders. You'll be dealing with politics and economics. You'll be dealing with direct fire and indirect fire. And you're going to be dealing with it all. And it's all going to be dealt with simultaneously.
Tinfoil Hat Club, Scott Hensler, Monday, December 5th, 2016. Just a few days away from December 7th, the 75th anniversary of the bombing of Pearl Harbor. And next week or next Wednesday, I am going to cover a little bit about that, my take and what I've come across and the horrors of our own government allowing men and women of the military, including civilians, to fall casualty to the Japanese Imperial Army. This is just another take of how the government is, how it's been, and they haven't stopped. Now tonight, when I talk about the Phoenix incident, I'm talking about the Phoenix Lights. Most of you are familiar with that. I was actually living in Phoenix. I was a resident of Phoenix for 47 years, and I was with the sheriff's office down there and search and rescue and other parts of that type of environment, and I had just really resigned at the time of this particular incident in 1997, and so I was not involved in what I'm going to talk about tonight, but I certainly know the areas. I know the mountain ranges, I know the deserts, I know other circumstances, and I will be talking about that tonight and giving you my take. Now, when I talk about the Phoenix incident, it's Incident USA-001, and there was a movie made about it. And so I'm going to be covering a little bit about the movie. It's somewhat of a documentary. There's a lot of information that was released that was so critical that the federal government, or at least the military, did investigations to find out where they got their information, because it was so close to home on the actual events that really took place. And there were those who were pilots who had come forth years later to blow the whistle on exact incidences that took place. So as I go through that, please understand that the information that I have is the best I can come up with, trying to get through and weeding through everything. There's been some hype, there's been some theatrical to the movie and everything else, but the main concept or the main idea is that even if a small percentage of it is true, which I do believe it is, then it warrants the fact that there was a major cover-up and there was certainly more to the story. and a horrible story at that, because it involves the disappearance of 4 young men, and as I get into that, you'll understand. So let me educate you a little bit about myself. If you're a new listener, I've had a lot of new listeners come in, that I am by trade right now a deliverance minister. Some know that as an exorcist. I go and I clear houses out, I pray for people, I bind and I cast out demons. I do those things that we've been commanded to do by our Lord Jesus Christ. Now, a lot of people don't believe in Jesus. A lot of you listening are from the occult or New Age or whatever you want to call it. And so you see him as an ascended master, or you don't believe him at all, or whatever the circumstances, that's fine. That's where I was at one time. Need to understand in 93 and my ventures that I had, I was trying to find truth, and in that having some iniquitous pull already into Eastern mysticism, stumbled into New Age and trying to do transcendental meditation, trying to astral project, trying to do whatever I could, not knowing what I was doing, opened up a horrible, horrible demonic realm door and was basically cast into outer darkness. That's the way that I'm going to describe it. And it was so horrifying, so terrifying to me, because there were demons that were literally trying to rip me apart, that were coming after me. And the most frightening part was the fact that there was no more love. Now, even though I was not, a bondservant of Jesus Christ at the time, now I didn't disagree, I didn't disbelieve, I just didn't have any confirmation. And so just prior to going into this realm, after trying to, lighting candles, looking into the mirror, trying to project, that whole 9 yards, that the presence of the Lord, I just didn't recognize was there. When I say the Lord, our God. But in the twinkling of an eye, in the moment that I was into outer darkness, that love, that protection, that embracing, that covering was gone. And so that's why I call this the outer darkness. And again, it was so terrifying to me that I reached out to a Bible that I had purchased 2 weeks earlier and grabbed it and said, God, make these things go away. And I was instantly back into the physical, and I'm estimating that was sometime around 11 o'clock at night. When I had re-looked at the clock after the incident, it was somewhere between 1 and 2. So several hours had passed when in reality it only seemed like maybe a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes maximum. And so, time and space, everything that we talked about in Montauk with time and space and travel and hyperspace and everything else, well, I experienced it. And that at that point in time, I knew there was a God, and I was convinced that his son, Jesus Christ, was going to be my answer. And that's when I gave myself to the Lord in 93. And it was a wild ride all the way up till 2000, when I finally came to a point of being through about every kind of ringer you can imagine and crawled into a deliverance ministry in Scottsdale, Arizona. Had to do with bad relationships, bad choices, and came to the realization that demons were real, and the fact that even in my walk, see, this is the lie of the church. They'll tell you that once you become a Christian, that all goes away. That's one of the biggest lies ever told. Ladies and gentlemen, you need to understand we're in a battle, we're in a war. And as I go through this tonight, those things in the dimension, those things that are even out into space or into other dimensions in itself, as they come to us, they are here not to be our friends. And so my realization that even though that I was in Christ Jesus, the fact that I didn't know what I was doing led to a very, very near miss of my demise. But apparently the Lord had something else in plan, and as a willing participant and willing to repent and to renounce, confess, and ask for forgiveness, again I ventured into a new world called deliverance, which is what the churches should have been doing all along. If they had, we wouldn't have who we have in office. We wouldn't have the circumstances in this world. The United States wouldn't be in the position they're in. But as we've taught before, the order of things from Albert Pike and Freemasonry, the Illuminati, New World Order, Council on Foreign Relations, the infesting of the CIA, and everything in between. We are where we're at. And the massive cover-up for UFOs and aliens and reptilians and all the other things that I'm going to talk about tonight is such a magnitude that they've done such a great job. Now, the only way you can really deceive the masses is if evil is involved with it. Man himself is not capable of being omnipresent, omnicapable, to be able to deal, with this mass deception. And now, of course, we have electronics. Now we have cell phone technologies. In fact, on Wednesday, I'm going to be commenting on the new movie on DVD called Cell, S-E-L-L, like cellular, about mind control. And if you've seen the movie, you may be interested in. But again, tonight, my focus is on the Phoenix incident, which is based on the Phoenix Light incident in '97. So as I go through this, I want you to understand that the connection of the deception within the mainstream churches, the CIA, Monarch Mind Control, MK Ultra, all of this stuff is all tied together as I tied with it the 4-part series on Montauk. Very serious stuff. It's gotten us to where we're at. And the sad thing of it is that there's an answer. And that answer was overlooked. That answer was intentionally taken from us. And that is the blood of Christ. So again, those who do not believe in that, do not listen, agree, that's fine. But I need you to understand that I could not do what I do without it. It would be impossible, and I would be slaughtered immediately by the demons. And at that point in time, when I was in that outer darkness, that's exactly what they were coming to do, was destroy me, both mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And again, the grace of God intervenes, and here I am. So I'm going to continue that work. This is now going on my 17th year. I started out in Arizona there in Scottsdale. I'm now in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, up in the Panhandle, wedged in between Spokane, Washington, and Missoula, Montana. Very beautiful area, but it is also a stronghold for the occult. And I've talked about that in detail, and we'll talk more about it at another time. Well, again, my involvement, my years in Arizona, again, led to law enforcement, led to search and rescue. My main focus at the time was a man tracker, meaning that anybody who was lost, anyone who was, trying to escape, anything that called to try and find clues and signs, whether it was in the woods, whether it was in the desert, whatever the circumstances is, to find them. Now you say, well, satellites, cell phones, flare, devices. Well, a lot of that wasn't available. Okay, I started out in the 80s, coming into the 90s. We're talking about a long time ago. Now, nothing replaces boots on the ground, though. I'll tell you, a good eye is worth its weight in gold for finding people who are lost, especially in the deserts when a couple hours means life and death. The temperatures are high. You can only carry so much water. Especially children, they're so small that they dehydrate at a rapid rate. That's why you have to be very careful with them. So in either case, finding them as quick as possible was one of my jobs. So when I would get called, I would have to respond immediately. Now again, as I mentioned, at the time of the Phoenix Lights, I had resigned at that time. It wasn't by choice. There were some circumstances that had to do with a relationship that was not of the best, and it was time to do a life change, and so I did. I believe that if I had been still with them, that I would have been on the case, and I'll tell you why. That the Australia Mountains, just south of Phoenix there, which is part of Phoenix, Avondale, is a very unique area. It's very rough. I myself did many searches there. I spent hours tracking a woman who would come off her medication that just took off to the deserts, and it was vital to find her before the sun came up, and so we went all night, and I did manage to find her tracks, managed to find her clothes. She had stripped naked, and she didn't have any shoes on, and it was amazing that she made some imprint onto that hard ground in the desert, but I managed to find it, tracked her, noticed that she was heading towards one of the peaks on Australia, which was illuminated by the moon, and by compass reading, she was heading for it. So as I radioed into the command post, they dropped another team off onto the mountain to work their way down, and lo and behold, they found her about a third of the way up, and so she was okay. So again, with my ventures there and the Superstition Mountains and the White Mountains, I've got a lot to say about that, and I've even written about that in my book, Secondhand Invasion. There's a lot of UFO activity, a lot of supernatural, a lot of things that take place, and again, this that took place on March 13th, 1997, the Phoenix Lights, again being made into the movie Phoenix Incident. So as I go through this, understand that it also involves Hale-Bopp, the comet that had come through in 97, was visible for 18 months. This includes Heaven's Gate. You remember the individuals that committed suicide thinking that they were going to get a ride on Hale-Bopp, and that whole cult actually has a tie to another individual that is one of the main subjects of the movie, of the incident, which is still under investigation, but it is also one of the greatest cover-ups that the government has ever done. And this also involved 4 young men who were still missing. And when someone goes into a desert area and they don't come out, believe me, you can find them. I have found bones, jaws, knees, hands. You know, the coyotes make quick work, but if you have a team that's large enough and good enough, they'll find something. Now, supposedly these men, as they were, the report came on the 14th, that them missing, there were supposedly bones found, and the coroner's office made statements, but the military intervened. Now, this again, this was the same time as the Phoenix Lights. So I want you to understand that there is a connection. There was a massive cover-up, and though the movie is pretty theatrical, there's a lot of information that they were able to gather from witnesses, from whistleblowers out of the military, including Luke's Air Force Base, which I'm very familiar with, and I've got some comments about that, along with Williams base that was closed down by Clinton. In either case, the things that took place that have been covered up for so long also led to the supposable suicide of the individual who was key, that was originally charged for the murders of these 4 men. But as the information comes forth and the videos that he had, because he had a compound out there in the Australia area that was actually once inhabited or used in co with the Heaven's Gate, and then there was a disagreement and they separated. But either the case, the videotapes, the testimonies have brought into a new light, and again, that's what brought the movie in. So before I get into it, though, I want to thank everyone for supporting as we close this year out. This has been quite a ride for the past 2 years. My office here will be open pretty soon for 2 years. I originally started back about 5 years ago now, going public. I've been doing deliverance starting on to the 17th year, definitely 16 years. And the difference in, well, let's just say from what I knew then and what I know now, especially with the government covers up, the psychotronics, the mind control, the stuff that I didn't know about when I first entered into the deliverance ministry, I've got a whole different attitude and a whole different way of approaching things. And so that's what I do, and so that's why I'm a little different than a lot of deliverance groups. But I want you to understand that that those people who are in the middle, those people who don't know who else to go to, that's who I'm the one they come to. Between MK Ultra mind control, satanic ritual abuse, gang stalking, psychotronics, demon possession, demon infection, curses, you name it, along with personality disorders. I'm probably the command center for borderline personality disorder. And either case, because of my diversity, I hope that I have something for you that you learn. There's many people that have been emailing me lately that have great testimonies of coming out of very, very delicate situations that may have ended in resulting in them biting a bullet at one time. So I want you to understand as I go through this information that it's also based on what I've seen over the years and what I've personally encountered myself, even with man tracking. And I talked about that in my book, Second Invasion. But in either case, the diversity that I'm trying to do here, and of course, Julie was with me for some time, an occult forensic expert. Her take and stuff of the occult was incredible. And certainly the information that I learned and that you learned from it, we can all piece it together to understand that there's more to talk about. There's more to uncover. If anything, we've just really entered into this new realm of 2017. Because with 2017, the information that we have that the Illuminati would love to wrap it up, the FEMA camps to be routed into, using the cell tower double-duty technology to basically cause us, to surrender. Whatever the case is, we've got a lot of reporting to do, and it's because of your contributions and your help and your support that I've been able to do this, and I'm not going to stop. I'm under attack myself. I'm dealing with gang stalking. I'm dealing with psychotronics, whatever. But you know what? They're going to do it anyways, and I'd rather go down swinging. And as I've talked to a lot of people recently that have been, they're wore out. The little hearts are broken, and they're losing the hope to fight back. Don't give up. Don't give up at all. Have a righteous indignation for the very fact that these criminals would do something to someone like you, that God loves you, you are treasured, you are a jewel in His eyes. He wishes that none should perish. So roll up your sleeves and start swinging, because God hates the wicked every day, and these individuals that I reveal, the ones that I expose, the ones I shout their sins from the rooftops, that there is a judgment coming, there is a reconciling coming, there is going to be vengeance, there is going to be those things that will show that there is a God. And so I want those, regardless of your circumstances, to understand that it's time to say enough's enough. I'm not going to take this any longer. Because children, the elderly, the less fortunate, we have a job to do. And so by exposing all this and by your support, we are making headway. It may be ones and twosies here and there, but over the years, that's a lot of people. And those go on to talk to other people and to help. And so thank you. And if again you're new, I've got 3 basic books: BPD or Jezebel, having to do with borderline personality disorder; Second Heaven Invasion, a manual for end of times; the condensed version Hoodoo Voodoo, which is in paperback form. All of them are Kindle. But if you're financially strapped and you're in a situation like under a curse of poverty, please email me, and I will be more than happy to PDF these to you. These are for everyone. So I'm going to do the best I can to make sure that you have everything necessary. So it's been 2 years that I've been in, going on 2 years in this office. Again, the 17 years, the 5 years of public. I was on Walking Among Spirits as well as Scott Hensler Network. We did for a couple of years with Julie, and then we went into Tinfoil Hat Club. So tinfoilhatclub.com is basically the home base, and so if you get a chance, go to it if you haven't been to it yet. I'm trying to post and keep some updates. I've got a new posting of the Clintons and their crimes. If you've ever wondered who they killed, why they killed, and how many they've killed, this is a good video documentary that really has the facts. So at tinfoilhatclub.com you will find that. All right, Phoenix Lights, March 13th, 1997. I was living in Chandler at the time. I personally did not witness the lights myself, but certainly dealt with the aftermath of one concerned. Again, I had just resigned from Maricopa County, no longer being involved in search and rescue. As I mentioned, I didn't see them, but I certainly dealt with the anxieties and the presence in the air that something was going on. Okay, Governor Fife Symington, the old rascal himself, later admitted after he was out of office that he knew more about the incident and that there was other things to reveal. But at the time, he made light of it, and I'm sure the federal government put some pressure on him to really make a big joke out of it. And he did a tremendous disservice to those people who truly witnessed these things that took place, because the confirmation to someone who sees something that is basically traumatizing, to confirm to them that they're not crazy, that it really did happen, really helps them. And so by denying this, again, Fife himself, we went through a rash of governors, boom, 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 that were just garbage, and I'm afraid Fife himself, along with the banking incidences and all the cover-ups and scandals, just was an incredible time, and it still continues. But everything was abuzz over that incident. Now, since I didn't have anything to do with the search efforts at the time, I need to understand that I most likely would have been called on this, that the 4 young men that were missing in the Australia Mountains. Now, that's a beautiful park area. It encompasses a large area of the deserts. It's very rough. When the sun comes out, you're out there and you're surrounded by the mountains, and if you have any water, you're not going to make it. But Glenn Luter, Mitch Adams, Ryan Stone, and Jacob Reynolds are the 4 that are missing. They were all friends. They were all hiking. They were biking. They were very active individuals, and they just happened to be out there when the Phoenix Lights incident took place. And they were all in their 20s, very youthful, very able to take care of themselves. It wasn't like somebody was going to be able to just jump them. And for them to be missing like this is a very rare case. Now, it's typical for 1 or 2, but not 4 young men that were capable. And though I don't think there were any firearms mentioned in this at all, that they themselves, if anyone tried to take them on, they would have had their handfuls. So the Australia Mountain Range, again, is based south of Phoenix. Again, it's a very beautiful area. It's being built up. I used to go there a lot, too, in what was called Rainbow Valley. That was where the high-powered rocketry clubs, what the rockets are, you ignite them and they go up several hundred feet. Well, this was the high-powered rocketry. These were ones where they got FAA clearance. They were, and at a certain rocket size, you had to be certified by the Tobacco and Firearms, because they're very dangerous to light one of them things off. And so it was quite a pleasure to go out there and watch those, because there was amazing feats. And so that whole area was a very beautiful, very recognized place, and it's being built up. A lot of the people of wealth and a lot of the athletes that had to do with the local basketball and football teams bought homes out there. So, but again, it's vast enough that as it goes down to Maricopa, down to Gila, down to those areas, as I describe this, it's very vast. Okay? Well, in other case on how this all worked out, there was a man who was actually arrested and suspicion for the disappearances of these 4 gentlemen. And what makes this interesting is that immediately the Air Force, Luke's Air Force Base is also out there by Phoenix, they came in and they literally took this man away from Avondale Police and the Maricopa County Sheriffs. Now, the Avondale at one time was under the Maricopa County Sheriffs, and then they became incorporated and had their own police department. So however that ever worked out, who was in charge, but the sheriff's office is always the senior officers within a county. Whenever an incident happens within desert, generally that's their jurisdiction. So the detective that was in charge also gave testimonies per this, that the gentleman that was held for the suspicion of the disappearance of these 4 men, that the U.S. military took them away. So that in itself raises an eye, as to why would such a thing happen, because that's just not the norm. So this is where it really gets strange, okay? The incidents of the Phoenix Lights, there was an accusation from even members that were part of Phoenix on the council of the city, governor's or the state governor, as well as the city mayor, accusations that in reality that this was a project called Snowbird, the Phoenix Lights. And what that means is whenever there's truly an incident that takes place, and I want you to listen to this, whenever there's really a UFO encounter, whenever there's something that they do not want the public to know, they will intentionally make a diversion to get the public's eye away from the center point. Now, Clinton was good about this. Every time he got in trouble in the Oval Office with sex allegations, he would go bomb something. And so I'm going to refer to him as Project Snowbird. But in reality, what may have taken place is that these lights that were seen over Phoenix may have been a complete diversion. The incident, over Australia area where these 4 men is actually where it took place. And what took place was that there was a full engagement with F-15s and the A-10 Warhogs. That's that large tank killer plane that is one of the most amazing aircraft ever made, I believe, and it's a shame they took them out of service. But in full engagement of UFOs with F-15s, Hueys, and that Warthog, from those who have come forth that were witnesses, including pilots from Luke Air Force Base, then in reality, that whole thing that took place over Phoenix was a diversion to get the eye away from what took place over Australia Mountain, where the 4 gentlemen are missing. Okay? So their disappearance is then in relation to what took place over Australia Mountain. Now, the suspect held for this was held in a compound and then moved to Florida or moved to Colorado. Now, we need to understand that there were no charges formally filed against this man. There were no trials, by the military. And he was held for a very long time. And as I get through this, it's going to blow you away to see that an individual, a U.S. citizen, could be detained the way that he was without any formal charges. And we know that Obama has made executive orders to do just that. So that can actually take place, that without due process, you can be apprehended, you can be detained, you can be, without any charges whatsoever, made to go away. And that's pretty scary. So again, this individual was the first, originally, they believed that he was involved in the disappearance. But as I go through this, you're going to see the connection, all right? So it was the Office of Special Operations of the United States Air Force that took this man, Walton Samuel Grayson. Now mark that name down because there's plenty of video. Again, he's linked to the Heaven's Gate, those individuals that killed themselves because of Hale-Bopp. Now, again, with his compound that he had out in that desert area, where the 4 men were at was also where the engagement of the UFOs took place. Okay? Starting to see a connection now? All right? So again, he was held without formal charges by the government, held without trial, held without indictment for 15 years. 15 years. He was placed in federal custody in a penitentiary there in Colorado. Now, through this, supposedly, after the 15 years, through lowering down the incarceration, that he escaped. Now there's some controversy about that. Controversy that he was actually allowed to leave. But in either case, months later, he committed suicide, filming it as he poured gasoline on himself and set himself on fire. Okay, is it getting any more interesting here? All right. Suicide by gasoline fire. Now, when they went to his house where he was at, they found several, tapes that were made at the compound in Australia where the 4 men were missing and the UFO encounters took place. And I can assure you that those were confiscated immediately. But the whistleblowers that have come forth have helped tie this all together. Okay? So he, being Walton Samuel Grayson, and his testimony witnessed himself that these 4 men were actually taken by the aliens one of the craft that engaged with the F-15s, one of the pyramid-shaped things, had crashed. And from there came these things, and there was an engagement. Now, again, the movie is pretty theatrical about it. How accurate all that is, I'm not going to support that. But the point of it is, again, there's a lot here that needs to be explained, and now that we've had whistleblowers who were actually there at the air base, actually pilots that engaged and now coming forth, and, you know, with the massive cover-up, something took place. So again, with, you know, Walton himself in his testimony, and himself being absolutely bonkers with what he saw, you can imagine the trauma that he went through, and then under the incarceration and everything else, that's a very unusual circumstance. And though whatever his, you know, stance was, I feel bad for the guy, because even though he may not have been wound too tight, you know, he may not, you know, the elevator may not have gone all the way up. No one needs to go through that, okay? You're still a U.S. citizen. You still have rights. You still should have due process, all right? Now, Luke Air Force Base, again, being just outside of Phoenix, they encountered with this with the 104th Airborne. Now, you need to remember the 104th is actually out of Washington. So this engagement with the UFOs actually took place over a period of time before ending up in Phoenix. Now, with the ability to track those things in space and looking at anomalies of electromagnetism that took place with HAARP. Now, if you're familiar with HAARP, you probably know it as being very involved with weather, modification, and so forth. But you need to remember the antenna arrays, that when you put such an array together and in a large form, you have a very sensitive radio receiver. It's a transceiver. It doesn't just transmit, it's capable of receiving. So any anomalies in the air can be picked up. Now, they followed these things coming in. They deployed the 104th, and then, of course, those, because the air base at Luke Air Force Base is actually a training base, all right, but we do have other air bases around. We have Fort Huachuca. We've got some others. In either case, this ended up taking place. Now, I don't know how familiar any of you are with Phoenix. When you get south, you get towards Gila, you have what's called the Barry Goldwater Range. This was originally called the Gila Gunnery Range. I'm very familiar with that. I used to be out there quite a bit. I watched planes that were incredible that you never saw before. When they would drop bombs, they were so intense that your whole body would shake. You could feel it in your chest. It would actually make your heart skip a beat. Again, all of this was just south connecting with Australia Park. So it's all interconnected. And so the bigger fight that took place apparently was over that Goldwater gun range. All right? So the 104th, again, was dispatched from NORCOM. NORCOM, the North American Aerospace Defense Command. Again, one of their main sensors with radar is HAARP. So if the anomalies that took place, they were able to track it. They noticed that the things came in over Phoenix, and then it was all dispatched. Now, also note, too, that during the incidences, they lost 2 key satellites that were taken out during this incident. All right? Now, again, after 17 years, okay, that someone has finally come forth as a whistleblower who actually was, again, involved in this, revealing this massive cover-up. Now, from the original point in time, that an estimated 257 people have been missing since then. Do you understand that? Now, when I did search and rescue at the time, there were 11 people that could not be accounted of finding their bodies, of who they even belonged to. They were unidentifiable at the time for me, and that was years ago. So since then, there's been 257, and that number has probably increased. So with testimonies, new information, whistleblowing, okay, sparked the making of the movie, The Phoenix Incident. So again, with the theatrics in that movie, I'm not going to say everything's in place, but certainly it is entertaining enough and certainly opens your eye. And by the way, there is real footage that's in the movie with Walton, with the young men that are missing, some reenactment. But the point of it is that the story that's told tells us that there's something else going on here. So again, I'm not going to support the whole movie in whole, but however, why hold Grayson for so long? Where are the 4 missing young men? Okay, at the same time as Hale-Bopp. Okay, and by the way, there's some speculation that these things, because of the massive size of Hale-Bopp, its speed trajectory, that potentially that these creatures or these things that they engaged in may have been able to ride the coattails of Hale-Bopp. Now, I don't know. But whenever you have something so massive with such gravitational pull and going at such a speed, talk about a free ride. Have you ever been behind an 18-wheeler? You do know if you get close enough, you can get within their airfoil, and you can actually increase your gas mileage. Now, of course, that's dangerous, and truck drivers, 18-wheelers, do not want you to do that. But you do understand what I mean? You get in behind that, and you break, that air, be able to plow through, just like geese. You'll see geese flying, right? And they're in that formation. And what they're doing is they're allowing the lead duck or the lead geese breaks, he's the head point, and they'll actually take turns. He'll wear out, then another one will take its place, and it gives the others the ability to not fly as hard, so they can fly these tremendous differences. And in my opinion, it's basically the same thing. So again, this actually is the largest cover-up, even including Roswell incident. All right? Now, when I talk about Roswell, I've also talked about Dreamy Draw. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with Dreamy Draw. Again, it's in Phoenix there, one of the connections of a very beautiful area that is sort of mountainous within the Phoenix area. There was Squaw Peak. They tried to change that name because they thought the word squaw was offensive. But that whole area is very beautiful. Senator Barry Goldwater had his house there. Alice Cooper had his house there. A lot of the Hollywood stars do. But it turns out Dreamy Draw was one of the major incidences of a UFO crash. So intense, so massive that they actually, when they came in, built a dam over it. Now, excuse me, dams need to be in a lower part, not at the top of a mountain. What good does a dam do when there's no water to hold it back? So when you go through Dreamy Draw, and if you're heading north and you look over the right side, you will see it. And if you Google it and look it up, you'll find that this dam-looking structure makes absolutely no sense. Well, what they did is they came in and they just poured all this massive concrete over the UFO crash, and it's on lockdown. All right? So again, Dreamy Draw is just north of Australia. Okay? Again, one of the biggest cover-ups since Roswell in itself. Okay? Now again, I myself were on several searches within Australia. One airplane crash, again the woman I was talking about, other people, but this also encompasses the Superstition Mountains. I don't know if you're familiar with the Superstitions, the Superstition Mine, the Lost Dutchman's Mine, one of the largest golds, finds or missing gold that everyone's been looking for. These areas are very high in supernatural events, lost people never to be found again, murders, people dropped off, the Superstition Wilderness, because you can't drive in there, you have to walk in at one time. It was a great place to go dump bodies. And being involved in what I did, I was there all the time. Even involved in a hiker that died on the trail and had to get him air-vac'd out of there. Just happened to be there at the time when that took place. So when we look at these areas, they're always a hot spot for UFOs. I myself, my very first UFO was over this particular area that had to do with the superstitions, not for Australia, but over the superstitions. But again, they're all within that same area. Okay? Now, just south of Australia, you might, I don't know, if you were big in reading Reader's Digest, I was on one of the biggest searches for a child that was missing in the town of Maricopa. And you need to understand that 2 days maximum, a child in the desert, if they last that long, that's an act of God. This child was 4 days out. Found him alive. And it was such an incredible story. It made Reader's Digest. It was in the early 1990s, I believe. Time's really flowing by, but I was on that search. And now another thing, too, in that area, I've talked about the temple homicides, that I was on that, too. I've talked about, the bloody clothes that were never found and that exonerated these guys, and in reality, I found those clothes, and I had a federal agent or something of that nature take them away from me, evidence that I found. Okay, so you see that this whole area just is cursed. Beautiful, the Sonoran, the deserts of this area, again, just being a high area for incidences. Now, if you're familiar with Sedona, if you've ever been there, and that's a beautiful area, but again, that's a very high area of occultic activity, of UFO activity, of supernatural events. And I mentioned in my book, Second Heaven Invasion, that I dealt with in this incident there myself where something was trying to choke me when I was camping. And I got there late at the campsite, and it was dark, and just quickly pitched up, a tent and everything else. And it turns out that I had put my camp on a pentagram that literally was the size of a football field. Gee, wonder why I woke up with something choking me. Now, one of the other instances I want to bring up, too, when we go a little bit north of Scottsdale there, Cave Creek, Carefree, very beautiful area, that I was on a search for an elderly man that was missing. And up Schoolhouse Road, when you come to the very end, you come to some of the most intense desert and rock formation, lava formation, cactus, mesquite, Palo Verde. You can't get through. You need a bulldozer to get through. Once you get to a certain point, you're not going anywhere. Now, when Schoolhouse Road ended is where I started my search, and we immediately picked up the guy's tracks. And what was interesting, he was a guy that when he did his long walks and he would find a tin can, he would crush it, how you set it upward and you stomp on it. Instead of saving them, he would throw them along the road for other people who collect cans. And so it was obvious that this was who we were looking for because the family reported that that's what he did. And sure enough, that's what we found. We found his tracks. We find the crushed cans and thrown out on the road. So now we get to a wash that had some water in it, and the track stopped. Now, I was the lead tracker, meaning that in a formation of three, I had two who flanked, one to my left and one to my right. So if I lost the track, hopefully the guy to the right then would pick up a clue or sign, and it was one way to make quick time. So we lost the track. We went up and down the small stream there. We crossed it, and lo and behold, picked up the track again. So he crossed the river, or the small stream. We didn't go more than 20 feet, and that track, now this is soft sand because this is a riverbed, all right? Anybody could track anybody in that kind of condition. Those tracks stopped. Didn't go left, didn't go right, didn't turn around. They stopped, just like this man was plucked out of the air. Boom, he was gone. And to this day, I don't know if he's ever been found or if anything else has ever come on to it. It was towards the middle of my career in all this, and so we scratched our heads, we looked around, and you got to remember, I was with a very good team. All right, I didn't consider myself one of the better ones, but I certainly had some of them who were with me, and we didn't find anything. Those tracks stopped, he was gone, and again, to my knowledge, he's never been found. So, just amazing what can take place. All right. And I have mentioned in my book before that another incident that took place as we go up north in the White Mountains, that I had an encounter with Sasquatch, and then where the Mount Graham telescope, now Tom Horn has talked about that at the base of the telescope when I was doing a tracking search for a guy that was lost, when I went into the canyon that was below the telescope, the further we went in, the sicker I got. The more anxieties I got, the more I felt like I was going crazy. And finally, it got so bad that I had to turn around and come back, and then the more that I left the canyon, the more I came back to being normal. The less sick I felt, the less anxieties. And we never found this guy either, so I don't know how that ever turned out, but whatever's in that canyon, if you've heard the testimonies from Tom Horn about Mount Graham that being a very high occultic area, a very high spiritual gateway known for the Indians, that the supernatural would take place, and then of course the telescope, which is the Lucifer telescope, in coordination with Arizona State University and the Vatican. Okay, pretty interesting stuff. And of course that was quite a few years ago. And now again, the Superstition Mountains. When you get in there, it is so beautiful and so peaceful. But you know, you're a sitting duck for anything that comes along. And again, it's a high active area for UFOs. And so, if you ever decide to go out there, don't go out alone. So please. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with the Fire in the Sky movie that took place of the White Mountains. Just, you know, you go up a little further north into the White Mountains of Arizona, and you know what took place up there has to do with a gentleman who was abducted, and then several days later then was released. And of course his testimony is pretty intense, and I believe what he's saying. I believe that he did experience what he experienced. Very few did. Again, the movie Fire in the Sky, Walton, I believe, is his name. But again, from that point forward, then there was a escalation of events that took place. Okay, so again, from Sedona Desert, Mojave, all the way up to Sedona, over the White Mountains, Arizona and New Mexico is a hot spot. Okay, now if you're familiar with I-10 that comes out of Phoenix, okay, which also happens to cross right there, for Estrella Mountain area, is an area called Harquahala Valley. And I used to be out there all the time working on wells. I did electrical controls, I did troubleshooting, I did all kinds of stuff. And I'll tell you what, I-10 from Phoenix to Los Angeles, going through Harquahala Valley, the craziness that took place in that area. Skinheads came out of, Arkansas, and they were bound and determined to find an Hispanic and kill them. I was literally there at the time when that took place. And so the murders, the missing, it just never stops. And I want you to understand that if you're ever leaving Phoenix and you go across that desert through Harquahala Valley in towards Los Angeles, and towards, when you cross over the Arizona state line into California, do not stop. Do not stop. When many of the cases that we dealt with homicide, when I was doing all that, because that was part of my job, was evidence retrieval, that the amount of bodies dumped and the amount of murders that took place, including a young couple, I think they came from Pennsylvania, and on their honeymoon they were driving out through here, and they stopped to help somebody who, supposedly broke down, and he killed the husband and then abducted her, and you know what he did with her. So please, just be very careful. I-10 is just a cesspool, all right? Now, the other thing, if you're familiar with chupacabras, goat suckers, goat blood suckers, these things of south, that are basically in the deserts, all the way to Mogollon Canyon with Mogollon Rim with the Mogollon Monster, just adds to the intrigue of UFOs, all right? So again, Arizona and New Mexico in itself with Roswell, but when you get in towards the underground bases, reptilian, of all the other things that are taking place, just understand that those things whenever someone has an incident and they're talking about it, just listen to them. Because believe me, there's a very high probability that they really did see what they see. So whatever the real events are, the Phoenix incident, I just believe more is going to happen. Okay? And understand, too, that Glenn Luter, that there's a foundation that has been put in place for him. Okay? There's been nothing to bring any closure for the family at all. If you go to the websites of Missing Persons of Maricopa County or Arizona database, he and the other three are still in there. again, any information to help the family, bring closure to these individuals, they deserve to have that. And it's a terrible thing that 4 young men who were in the prime of their life disappeared like this. And as I mentioned, that it just doesn't happen when you have 4 young guys like that. Now, you can have one person, you can have girls, children, but 4 guys, the probability just isn't there. Something else is going on. And so, again, if you ever get a chance to watch the movie, it's pretty intense, but I recommend it because of the information that I didn't even begin to cover, because I haven't been able to verify it 100%. I want to tell you something I wasn't able to verify. But the point of it is that when you at least take a percentage of it, there's something going on. And so go into it with an open mind and do your own research. Because again, with us going into 2017, with those things that are going to accelerate, there's no question about it. Again, here, what I do with deliverances, with exorcism, with dealing with gang stalking, basic, just demonic supernatural events, it's all increasing. Okay, so, that's one of the reasons that I started the show, Tinfoil Hat Club, getting away from Scott Hensler Network, getting away of Christianity, because there's such an open realm of things that I want to encompass everybody. I believe everybody deserves the truth. I believe that people out there have information, so if you've got any updates, if you've got any information, please forward it to me, all right? And remember that Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays is when I'm doing the show now, from 5 o'clock Pacific time, that, as we go into the holidays here too, by the way, this is a hard time for a lot of people, right? You may be going through divorce, you broke up, may have lost a spouse, you may just be alone, period. And being alone in the holidays can be a very rough time. And so my door is open, my phone. Things have kind of calmed down a little bit, so I have more time. By the way, if I haven't gotten back to you, then somehow I've missed you, so call again. Let me get you back on the list, and I will get to you. Sometimes, between all the different formats of being contacted, it gets confusing, and I'm a one-man show here. I'm trying to do everything myself, so I apologize if I haven't got back to you. So call again, all right? Just let me know how you're doing, I got a call, recently about another incident that had to do with what got me into the ministry. And so to just verify to people that they're not crazy, that someone understands and someone's willing to help them is a great asset to bringing them back into reality, to understand that they're not crazy. They don't have to end their life, because suicide is a very high time for this. All right, so please don't even consider that. That's exactly what the enemy would want you to do, so do not. All right, as I close out here, again, my heart goes out to the family that lost these 4 boys, and, the relationships that they had. So again, if the military were to probably reveal in whole, at the time there probably would have been a mass panic. And again, the instances that took place over Phoenix, Project Snowbird, may have been nothing more than trying to lure everyone away from what was really taking place over the Australias down through the gunnery range. So, all right. So Wednesday, I'm going to cover a little bit about the movie entitled Cell, and I'm going to be discussing a little bit about what took place on December 7th, 1941. This is going to be the 75th anniversary. Can you believe that? 75 years ago. And what's amazing is, we were dealing with Germany and Japan, but a lot of people forget about Italy too. They actually declared war on us, and how strange that is to even think about that. So, this world is nuts. This world's insane. Just another day in the office. Has the whole world gone mad? Absolutely. Question is, where are you at? Whose side are you on? So just understand that there's going to be a reckoning. There's a time of confrontation, and this is no time to be on the wrong side of the fence. So if I could say anything to you, just please understand that there is a God, there is a way out, and his way out is his son, Jesus Christ. That's why it's Jesus plus nothing. All right, good night. God bless.
You're listening to the all-new KBLU Radio Network. That's the Blue Raven Network. Visit our website at www.oneblueraven.weebly.com. Often duplicated, but never replicated. You're listening to the all-new KBLU Radio Network. That's the Blue Raven Network.
Often duplicated, never replicated. You're listening to the all-new KBLU Radio Network, Blue Raven Network.